On this episode of No Blueprint, you'll hear a previously recorded podcast in front of a live audience on August 11th, 2018 at the Northwest Film Forum. We were joined by Cote Soerens from Resistencia Cafe, Luis and Leona Rodriguez from the Station Coffee Shop, and Solomon Dubie from Cafe Avole. This live podcast was titled The Business of Coffee. Enjoy. What's up, everybody? I go by the name of Domo.
And I go by the name of Yoshiko.
We sit with entrepreneurs and artists across disciplines to share their stories, insight, and gems. Their journey will inspire you to think about community and your own narrative, how it shapes who you are, and what your legacy will be.
You're listening to No Blueprint.
No Blueprint.
To No Blueprint.
No Blueprint.
You are listening to No Blueprint.
Cool. All right. I feel like I'm still in the studio, getting ready to start the real podcast. It's usually a whole bunch of things trying to figure out how come this mic isn't working, how come this isn't working, and so thank y'all so much for coming out tonight. I appreciate y'all, and so please give yourselves a round of applause. Yes. And so this is the first ever live recording of No Blueprint podcast. Thank y'all so much for being here. It means a lot. Yes. And so really quickly, I will go through sponsors because they will kick us out of here real soon. And y'all didn't come to see me. So sponsors, shout out to For Culture. Yes. Shout out to the City of Seattle Arts and Culture. Ambassador Stories, yes, that's us. Shout out to Hood Famous Bakeshop. If y'all didn't get an opportunity to grab some of the Vietnamese coffee cheesecake, please do so. And I hope you have some stuff to do tonight because you might be up. Shout out to the Northwest Film Forum for allowing us to utilize this wonderful space. Shout out to Uncode. If y'all don't know Uncode, please do your Googles and Google Uncode. They make amazing video content about Black folks all around the United States. Shout out to my guy, Keelam Tel Aviv. Go get his chat book talking about race in the Central District and gentrification. Shout out to Haiti Cold Brew. Again, if you haven't gotten any of the cold brew out there, please go grab some of the cold brew. David Pierre couldn't be here tonight because he's actually down in Haiti doing Startup Week Haiti for the second time. And so shout out to Haiti Cold Brew. Please follow them. No Blueprint Podcast. Of course, if this is your first time coming here, you can find us on YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes. We're 2 seasons in. Without further ado, I am going to pass the microphone to someone who's very special to me, my mentor, Zithri Salim, who is a PhD candidate at the I School at the University of Washington, and someone who has helped me really elevate what I do. And he is going to talk about a book that he is penning. And so without further ado, please make some noise for Zithri Salim.
So one factual correction real quick before someone hears this and kills me. I am a PhD student. I'm not officially allowed to call myself candidate until I pass my generals, which should be in December. So I am, as part of my PhD studies, and one of the things I focus on is social innovation and entrepreneurship. And specifically, I'm interested in the roles that race, gender, class, and ability play in our access to both digital media and entrepreneurship, but certainly the roles of those in community and how that makes community, creates community for non-white folks. So last year I had the pleasure of working with Dr. Carmen Gonzalez in the communications department at the University of Washington and taking her class. And one of the things I did for her class was complete a pilot ethnographic study of the Station Coffee Shop. And one of the reasons I wanted to do that was greatly inspired by the work Dominique had did with Soul of Seattle and just getting our stories out into the forefront. But another part of that is I grew up in North Beacon Hill, and seeing how much that community has changed and the various ways that it's affected both me and the people in the community as I hear people talking about their challenges with gentrification and all the shifts that's happening. And I feel like the station is a special site for understanding that type of change in communities, not only in how it's happening on North Beacon Hill, but also transferring that information to other communities in the city. So I completed an ethnographic pilot study. I have a long, as Luis and Leona will tell you, about a 35-page paper. If you're interested in that, Dom will flash, or he can get you my my Twitter. That's the best way to get it from me. And just let me know you're interested. I'm happy to share that paper with you as long as I get feedback. And that paper, essentially, we're going to take and transform along with visuals from the station and the community into a table book that discusses the topic of gentrification and its intersection with food and coffee in Seattle. So we're hoping to get that all put together and available for folks before summer of 2019. And you can follow that work and also follow me as a scholar by just tagging along on Twitter. So thank you, Domo. Very proud of you, young bro. And looking forward to things.
Cool. And so, if you have not been to the Station Community Coffee Shop, the Station Community Coffee Shop is located on Beacon Hill, 15th and Beacon, around 15th and Beacon to be exact. Leona and Luis will be up, 16th and Beacon, my bad. So Leona and Luis will be up here to speak more about that soon. Cafe Avole on Rainier and South Holly. If you have not been to Cafe Avole, please check out Cafe Avole. Solomon Dubie will be coming up to speak more about that. Resistencia Cafe, located in South Park. And so please, when you are down in South Park, please check out Resistencia Cafe. It just opened in June. Cote will be up in a minute to speak more about that. And so first up, we are going to bring Leona Rodriguez, who is the co-owner of the Station Coffee Shop that opened originally in 2010. They just opened up a new shop, which is a monster and a beast of a coffee shop, as the old station turned into a social justice library. And so please check out both of those. And without further ado, please give it up for Leona Rodriguez.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Leona Rodriguez, like Dominique said. My husband and I opened up the station in 2010, and we didn't expect it to be as huge as it is now. And I don't mean like we're super rich. I mean like we're well known. A lot of people know that the station is a safe place to be for everybody. POC, LGBTQ, homeless, people who don't have money to even buy a cup of coffee, you're welcome there. You won't be kicked out if you can't afford to buy anything. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. I didn't know I was going to come first. And I was telling Dominic that I'll usually let Luis talk because he's the talker and I'm the face of the station. So this is good for me. Working at the station has made me come out of my shell quite a bit. It forces me to talk to people and get to know people. And in our community, we have such a close-knit people who know us and pretty much are basically our extended family. And it's, usually it's the people that are left on Beacon Hill. Some people are new, but it's a lot of people who are still there and still trying to live there and stay there. Gentrification is huge, and Beacon Hill is becoming one of those neighborhoods with old houses in between the new square pieces of crap, excuse me, that I hate, but that's just me. And it's beautiful that we're there, and we have this community that's so beautiful. And I totally forgot what I was going to say to you. I totally forgot. This is live, right? Damn it. I'm trying to remember what I was telling him about the station earlier today. This happens every time you talk to me before I get recorded. Like I'm trying.
You were telling me about how everyone deserves coffee, even the folks that can't afford coffee.
Right. And everyone's welcome. You can use our bathroom. There's no key to get in. You don't have to. There's no code. I mean, we're not going to watch you. We're not, worried about you tearing up our bathroom. If it gets tore up, we'll clean it up, whatever. We just want it to be a welcome space where people who are, ignored or treated terribly or non-white, it's just a spot where you're comfortable and you're free to be there as long as you're not bothering anyone else, And this coffee shop I feel like it's different from any other coffee shop I've been in before we opened the station. Like people talk to each other and so many relationships have been formed at the station. And I have to say it has a lot to do with my husband. I mean, he talks your head off. So in our small spot, and I mean that in a good way, in our smaller location before we moved into the new one, it was so tiny that you had to talk to everybody in there. So he talked to every single person and got to know everybody who came into the station. So everyone was comfortable. And it's just that type of coffee shop. And I can't imagine another one like it. Yeah.
Thank you. Please make some noise for it. And I would actually be remiss if I did not say Leona was born and raised in the CD. The CD.
Make it clear. I don't want to be phony. I was actually born in Eastern Washington. My family is from the CD. My mother's side of the family, all from the CD. My grandmother's house was there for 50 years. And I've been here most of my life. So, yeah.
If you listen to the first episode of this season, not the Central District, not the Central area, it's the CD.
I'm very sensitive about that. Excuse me, but.
And so I have you come sit.
Am I? Oh, yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And please, next up, the man himself, Mr. Beacon Hill. Please give it up for Luis Rodriguez.
I am not talking for 30 minutes.
You don't.
4 minutes only.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. My name is Luis Rodriguez. I'm from Baja. So this is a joke. No. I'm from Baja California, Mexico, so I am a foreigner, which, our president doesn't like our kind. Yes, we opened the station coffee shop. Oh, look, that's the first one. We opened the coffee shop, like she said. She pretty much covered everything. In 2010, we'll probably talk about why, but coffee is everything for me. Coffee is the beginning and the end, in many different reasons why, but for me as a child, coffee reminds me of my father. My father passed away in 2009. Within 3-4 months that he passed away, I opened the coffee shop in memory of him, because I have a tattoo of my father in my right side after he passed away. And him and I had this beautiful connect because of coffee. At the age of 5, he used to make us café con leche, which is coffee and milk, like a very young age. And it was basically like a quarter of coffee and, tons of milk, and wake up at 5 a.m. every day with him, and remembering that, like, every time I take a sip of every coffee, every morning, every day, I think about my father. So for me, coffee is very, very special. Now, cultural, why I love coffee, besides my father, is because coffee is the beginning of blackness, right? So coffee was discovered, as we already know, in Ethiopia, and there's so much root of why coffee, because it's the beginning, and from there, I was trying to take back what belongs to our people. And that's why I'm so connected with coffee, because it represents Black and it represents Latin America, which is, Africa and Latin America. And of course they grow in other places, but it doesn't grow in Europe and it doesn't grow in America. So it's something that belongs to us. So that's why I love coffee. And my woman helps. She's been there with me from beginning. I love the fact that our kids are part of our, coming in there and helping us, and it's such a beautiful thing that I get to see my kids every day if I want to. They walk in there, they come with their friends, and seeing their friends, because they're our kids, so they're like, whatever, Dad, whatever. But his friends are like, oh my gosh, this is yours, this is your parents, and they're like, yeah, whatever. And they're like, oh, no, this is so cool. And I'm like, see, exactly. So now they're giving us more credit, than before. So I love it. I love, I'm always hooking them up, to try to be cool, like the cool father, like, oh, well, what do you guys want? And so we're always giving them coffee, like, this one is on me. This first one is on me, kids. But it's great. So that's why. So everything else, she pretty much covers. So, yeah.
Yes. And without further ado, please give it up for the owner of Resistencia Cafe, Cote Soerens.
So thank you so much for having us. My name is Cote Soerens. I am from Chile, little southern. Grab a boat, go left all the way down. That's where Chile is. And I came on my 20 crazies to Seattle. I came at 25 years old, and we opened Resistencia Coffee 2 months ago. We're in the third month. We opened in South Park, which is like the last Latino neighborhood in Seattle, within Seattle city limits. I think White Center is a pretty good area as well. And when I first came as an immigrant, I didn't know anyone in Seattle at all. And one of the places that became really important to me was a coffee shop in Greenwood at the time. It was called the Green Bean, that actually allowed me to meet a ton of people in a safe setting. I was this girl who had an accent, and it was kind of weird, but the fact that I was in a coffee shop was safe enough for people to engage me, and I think that that place was so important for me to plug in and just have a successful life in Seattle, like a nurturing life in Seattle, and moved to South Park, and at the time there wasn't a place that would be like a physical expression of all the community that is there. That would people who live in South Park are really into living in South Park. We love our neighborhood, but there wasn't a place where people could connect that was all ages. And in addition to that, we are experiencing a high amount of displacement. So places that are controlled by neighbors, by community who live in those spaces seem like really important to me. So about in 2016, I had this really heavy desire to open a space where we could come together and practice hospitality for everybody. And we figured that as a gentrifying neighborhood, a coffee shop was just a matter of time. So if there was going to be a coffee shop, it was better that it was owned by and for and operated by residents than for people who didn't really have a sense of civic responsibility or accountability to their actions in the neighborhood. So came together with a group of neighbors and figured out how do we do this, because opening a retail business in Seattle today is hard, and real estate is access to real estate is really difficult. And also there wasn't much infrastructure in the South Park to just rent a space. But we stuck to it, a group of neighbors. We pulled together, we made use of as many grants there were, and we won an impact pitch competition last year. And so we gathered the capital, and it was really important for us that the whole thing was hyper-local. So if for the construction process, for example, it was important to us that everybody who worked at Resistencia lived and represented South Park. And so we were super, super fortunate to get all my friend now, and Sister Chisuno came to work as a barista when we had a little cart that we started at a brewery. And we were going to close for a few months while we did the build out of our new space. And I remember telling Chisuno, hey, we really, really like you, but we're gonna have to close for 2 months because we started with a cart. How do we keep you on board? And she was like, I do construction. So Chisuno and I and another neighbor, Mateo, we just built our coffee shop in like 2 months. And we opened in June. And it's been, one of my biggest fears was that this would be, even though we were like bending over backwards to make it owned by community, that it would still have a ton of more privileged new neighbors at the shop. But it's been really beautiful to see that the people who spend time there have been longtime residents of South Park. And we've been hiring a ton of youth from South Park. For some, it's their first job ever. And so, you know, it's a very short amount of time that we've been open, but it feels that people own this shop in a very short time, and it's been super fun. Also, may I say, at this station has been a huge inspiration to us. Everybody was like, oh, it sounds a little bit like the station. And so I'm super honored I just can't believe we're like invited to the same podcast. May I just say that?
Last but, there we go. Last but definitely not least, the owner of Cafe Avole, Solomon Dubie.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, guys. I am also honored to be at this table with everybody, to be recognized as somebody in the community that's inspirational and that young and a minority in the community. To be able to do this has been a blessing. To be able to have the opportunity has been a blessing. And to be honest, all of this really started because I was a mama's boy. Interesting enough, yes, starting off, young, my mom used to brew coffee at the house, and I always found it interesting the way she would brew coffee and what she would do. And so me just running around the house, I just, one morning, I tell the story all the time. So this, for example, is a jebena. This is an Ethiopian coffee pot. This is something that you would find in any Ethiopian or Eritrean household. And you would probably see, a little old lady sitting behind a little table brewing coffee, and she does it in such a way that's so, just with so much passion. And so when I was a kid, I think I was probably like 8 years old, 9 years old, whatever, I woke up in the morning and I thought it'd be interesting to brew my mom some coffee. And so the way we do it is we would take fresh green bean coffee, and we would fry it on a frying pan, and then we would grind it and throw it into the jebena in the coffee pot and let it seep for about 5 to 10 minutes. And so what woke my mom up was the alarm, the fire alarm. Yeah, I almost burnt down the house. She woke up and she just sees me standing on the little stool over the frying pan and just frying some coffee beans. And she gets up. She's like, "What are you doing?" And it wasn't until I got older that I realized that I knew a lot more than I did, or that I expected that I did. Just the fact that it's been around the household all my life. I took it for granted, and I got older, and one day I was dropping my mom off to work, and the inspiration came then. She had her little cup of coffee in her hand that she brewed in the morning, and I was tired. I didn't want to drop her off. She woke me up and like, "Hey, you got to take me to work." And so I got up and I took her to work. And as we got closer to her job, I looked to my left and I noticed a big truck. And the truck had some writing on it. It said something, something coffee. And then it was at that moment that I realized that there was other coffee shops other than Starbucks. And I was like, what? What is this? And I was in school at that time. I was at Eastern Washington University, probably back for like summer break or something like that. And and it clicked, and I was always trying to find something that was going to be my niche or be my thing to do for the rest of my life. And I've been doing coffee all my life since I was a little kid, and here was the opportunity for me to start to explore coffee, and I did so. And so in 2015, I launched a campaign, as I had already occupied a space in South Seattle. It was a small little convenience store that a small family had ran, and I went in there with zero experience in running a business, with zero experience in working at a coffee shop or understanding coffee in this Western world that we know it to be. And as time prevailed, I wheeled in a small little coffee cart, and I taught myself how to pull shots. I used to get on Google and YouTube and just watch anything and everything that I could find, and I got better at it. And once I built that confidence, it wasn't until then that I launched that campaign, because I really wanted to turn a space into a coffee shop. And everybody in that area used to tell me, no, don't use this space. This is, you should go downtown. You should go do this. But I was able to connect with a lot of people in the community. I was able to really get to know a lot of folks, and it was a very diverse community. I'm right down on Holly, Rainier and Holly, which is very underlooked neighborhood, but we were able to bring people together. So after I launched the campaign, we raised enough funds to, not exactly enough funds, but we raised enough to get us going, enough to get us started. And I got rid of everything in there, and just like you did, I strapped up my boots and I started to demolish everything, and then I started to rebuild. And it wasn't possible unless people in the community inspired me and helped me get there. So, I always, want to thank the community and those that donated and those that supported and those that come by and support every day. It's a small space, and we're happy that we're able to bring people together. And I'm always excited to see new faces. And yeah, that's my little journey.
Nice. Yes. Thank you. What's that? Oh yeah, please lower your microphones. And yes, that's for y'all. Thank you. Just in case. Haiti Cold Brew, everybody. Please give our panel one more round of applause. I appreciate y'all. And so that was super awesome, because there was a lot of different themes that came up, and the one that automatically jumps out is what you ended with, is rolling up your sleeves, getting your hands dirty, and actually building out that actual space. And so that's definitely something that I want to come back to. One of the reasons why I wanted to start a community conversation with coffee is because that as a city in Seattle, we're so known for coffee. When people think about Seattle, you think of coffee, you think of the iconic names, but anybody who lives in Seattle knows that in order to get good coffee, you don't go to those iconic names. And so that's why I wanted to start with that. And I also wanted to center around the value of entrepreneurship and thinking about business. And one of as our city goes through so many changes, I often am thinking about how do we make it more convenient for folks to support things that are hyper local. And y'all are doing this every day, making it convenient for us to walk down the street to the station, walk down the street to Cafe Avole, walk down the street to Resistencia Cafe, and making it convenient and for us to get great coffee. And so to start with, Luis and Leona, I want to start with y'all. There's been an increase in public interest around entrepreneurship from school, industry, and government. And as the City of Seattle published data on their open data source, small businesses continue to grow at an enormous rate. Can you talk about the value proposition for y'all in having a space like the station?
Man, well, first of all, like as you already know, if you guys been to the new coffee shop, we put a pretty little penny there, so we went far and beyond what we wanted, because there was different reasons why. We did the whole small business, and it was beautiful. We loved it. It got too big, in customers, and I didn't want to be. I wanted to be like a big company, like not for the money, but like I was like, why do only white people get to have those really cool coffee shops, those really cool restaurants? I'm like, no, like this is. So we spent a lot of money, time, effort, tears and sweat on building this new place, but it was our new place, so we had a bigger team. So it was a little difficult, but it was something amazing that sometimes I walk in there, to be honest with you. Sometimes I walk in there and I see all the people, and I walk and see my place, and I'm like, wow, this is mine. Sometimes I forget that that's my place, and it's been an amazing journey right now, in this past year and a half. The other place was, like I say, it had a lot of joy, and it was beautiful. It was charming. But this new place has brought me like to a different level. And I know that I'm not answering the question, but I'm just saying that it's, yeah.
I was going to come to that, but that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
He's like, there's two of us.
There's two of us, yeah. Yeah.
So Leona, tell us about, can you tell us about the value your customers, what you've heard from customers and just folks that walk in? Like, I walk into this station at any given moment and I'll see at least 5 to 10 familiar faces. Sometimes I'll bother them, sometimes they're in the middle of meetings. Can you talk about like just the value that you've heard from them, and then personally what that means to you just seeing it?
Wow, the familiarity, like I said, familiarity of the station is pretty amazing. People, just know that they can be there, and they'll see someone they know or meet somebody new. It happens every day, and to me, that's kind of crazy for somebody who like holds up in a room by herself, and then to be out and to see all that. It's crazy, but in a good way. I think that's pretty great. And I think that's why people gravitate towards the station, because they know people. I know people go in there not all the time for coffee. They might go in there looking for somebody because they know that person's going to be there. Yeah. And they're like, have you seen so-and-so? I'm like, oh, they just left, but they'll be back. And so they'll wait for them. And it's pretty great. I mean, it's like another home for myself because I'm there all the time.
And for a lot of other people, too.
And for a lot of people. Yeah. I mean, people spend hours in there. It's just a place to get away and to be comfortable and, not be bothered or just to chill.
I will get used to this. Solomon, you talked about your personal connection to coffee. You talked about smelling the beans from your mother and learning and almost burning down the house. But talk about that transition from your stall in the mini mart to actually turning this into something that was full-fledged. And you briefly touched on raising the capital in the Kickstarter campaign. And that was when, I know that was when Kickstarter had first started. But please say more about that.
To be honest, a lot of it is confidence. It's about building the confidence to be able to put something out there, I found it a little bit difficult for myself, maybe because I was young, a little inexperienced, but I just didn't know how people were going to react. I mean, I started thinking about this in 2010. I formulated my LLC in 2011, or 12. And so trying to occupy a space was difficult. And yeah, I had looked at a lot of different places. Looked at some spots in downtown, and I was just young and inexperienced, really. And so when I found out about this space through a friend, I didn't think I was going to turn it into a coffee shop. I didn't know what I was going to do in there. It was a convenience store, and I was, again, just another, I was inspired about doing anything. I was like, oh, okay, let's just take this space, and it looks like it needs work, and I know how to paint, I know how to do this, and I understand some elements of business, but I haven't been in it. And it wasn't until I got into it, and I was really, that 2.5 to 3 years, I wouldn't say I was in limbo, but I was learning. I was teaching, I was understanding business, understanding how to deal with vendors, customers, so many customers I might have lost just because, just being inexperienced again. And so there was a point that a good friend of mine who lived literally in the same building as me, or in the same building as the coffee shop that it is today. And I would always talk to her about my ideas. I'd always talk to her about, yeah, I want to open up a coffee shop. I've got this espresso cart sitting in here, and she just said, why don't you just do it? Why don't you just do it here? And just like you said, Luis, I'm like, man, I want my coffee shop to be Pierre. I want it to, like, how come I can't get there? Well, I want that space. I didn't really envision this space as being that. It was run down, it was old, it needed a lot of work, but once she implanted that little seed in my head, I started seeing it. I started actually visualizing in the space I was in. My friends would come in and be like, come here, look at this, stand right here. You see this? Look, the coffee, this can be here, this can be there, this can be here. And the ball just started rolling. And my friend, her name is Colleen, by the way. She was like, yeah, let's, I was telling her, I don't got money to do this, and what am I gonna do? And she just was like, just do a Kickstarter. It's like, what? I gotta tell everybody that I don't got money? What? I need you guys to give me money? And she helped me, develop the plan, and then I just like I always was, I just took it and ran with it. And we were blessed, and we were really lucky to have supporters in the community that as soon as it launched, it got shared and got into the Seattle Times eventually. And from there, we just started seeing a lot of support and people really believing in my dream and my ideas. And, saying, oh my God, we'd love to see a little Ethiopian coffee shop. And at that time, I haven't seen anything like it. And so we were lucky enough to raise some funds and do it. Yeah.
Shout out to Colleen. That's dope. But and then thinking about, there's literally always that one person that is like your friend who is like, just do it. Just go out and make it happen. And so shout out to Jeremy who's in the audience, who told me to just do it and start my business. Still here today. On to Cote. So I'm thinking about, when I was writing these questions, I was thinking about South Park as a neighborhood, and you talked about hiring people from South Park. And I know that you do so much more than just run a coffee shop. And before you even started running a coffee shop, you did so much more community work around housing. Can you speak about some of that work and how that work helps you as you transitioned into running Resistencia Cafe?
Sure. So there are several questions there.
Good luck. Sorry.
Yeah. On hiring from the neighborhood, I'm a big believer in local economies, hyper local economies, and a ton of people talk about jobs, but we know that you can have a full-time job and still sleep in your car these days. So I'd rather think about creating neighborhood wealth and creating ways for everyone to be able to enjoy the prosperity that Seattle is having. So one of those ways, of course, is hiring from the neighborhood, and also all of our vendors, as much as people from the neighborhood we can have, the better. So I don't know, like we have this stylist company, the Headshot in South Park, and Kelsey does my hair, and every time I pay Kelsey, I know it's gonna come back to me in coffee, right? And French Girl Organics, that company is in South Park, and they have a company gift card. And anyway, so that's just a small example. But how it talks with South Park itself. This part of opening a coffee shop was also a way to build infrastructure for community development. Because if we're not connecting with each other, we can get bypassed pretty quickly. So this, for example, like there are people who have a ton of influence, and their decisions affect a number of us, and they're not always the best informed people. So, for example, the city of Seattle is super well-intentioned, but they have their own, like, each department has their own point of view, priorities. If it's not connected to a well-connected base of people who actually live and are affected by those decisions, then it can go awry, right? So I just used awry. Is that the word? This is the first time I ever used it. Awry. Yeah.
We'll take it. We'll take it.
Go bad, you're wrong. Anyway, so it's been really fun to see how, for example, like some mornings at Resistencia, every table is occupied by people scheming something on behalf of South Park. So whether it's city people, whether it's like artists, whether it's like, we have the Duamish Valley Affordable Housing Coalition, and, we're meeting there with the guys from like the Office of Housing. And we didn't have a space that would function like that in South Park before. There weren't any places to have a meeting. So in that sense, that was the connection for me. We have to build this infrastructure. And also that the work that I was doing before was super helpful. For example, getting permits for the construction. We need a master building permit. That takes months, and it's a nightmare, right? But, we had good connections with the people from the Office of Economic Development because of prior work, right? So, hey, Heidi, like a revision, we're stuck on the fire revision. This person is doing it, so 5 minutes later, it's passed, that kind of thing. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
No, it's definitely about who you know. Can you speak about your work in housing?
It's not much to show for so far, but years ago started a group of neighbors. We're all first-generation immigrants. Some of them had lived in the neighborhood for 20, 30 years. They had organized. They had really loved on this community, and they were like the first ones at risk of displacement. So we came together and realized we needed to organize and learn about affordability in general, because sometimes the city hosts these meetings and to tell you about MHA and whatnot, and the whole time our energy is spent in like trying to understand the terms that they're speaking about, medium income, whatever. Not so we came together to study actually like these terms, and we learned, and out of that we started realizing there were more people that wanted to organize. So we did with other groups in the neighborhood, mostly Latinos. We're trying to expand that, more representation from other groups. The Duamish Valley Affordable Housing Coalition. So now we're trying to figure out a number of strategies that I'm kind of like shy to say here, because they're super lofty.
So, I think the way that you said it, of just like, it's not important, I think that's really awesome.
Right.
That's super cool.
We'll see what happens.
and just the fact of like folks coming together to educate and understand, like at a basic level, what's going on, right? And how do we share the knowledge? And it's part of the reason we sit down with folks on the podcast, is because I know that there's something that Luis and Leona went through, that if hearing that story, the person who's out in the audience today who is thinking, man, I want to open up a coffee shop in my neighborhood, in listening to that story, maybe you catch something from that and you hurdle. Yes, absolutely. I have one more question that's specific to Leona. before we have questions for everyone. I know that you and Luis hire a lot of creatives and a lot of POC folks. Can you speak to us about the value that these folks bring into the station, and why this practice is important to you?
Oh my gosh, it's important because sometimes it's not always that easy for young POC to get a job in coffee shops. So we definitely want to make it clear that we can offer you a position if you are willing to work hard and be there and show up and learn and support us the same way we support you, especially if you live in a neighborhood. That's a huge plus. But we're also flexible, and I know some artists, some of our employees are artists and they're singers, performers, and they need their hours to change once in a while. So they need flexibility, which we can offer. They can sell their CDs in the station if they want. They can play their music in the station if they want. So it's a platform as well. It's their place of work, but it's also a platform, and it brings us business as well because they have their fans and their friends and their families who will come in and support us as well. So it's a win-win situation, and it's important to give them this exposure and to give them a job because if you're a starving artist, you have to have a day job. So why not with us?
Absolutely. And then the next few questions, anyone can answer. Feel free if it speaks to you. I want to speak about mentorship and the importance of mentorship, especially in entering entrepreneurship. As we know, most of us don't enter it alone. Shout out to my mentor who got up here earlier. But can one of you speak about your personal mentor and what advice your mentor gave you in starting and running your business? What was the best piece of advice that they gave you?
Anybody? So for me, it was not so much my mentor, but he's actually my older brother. His name is Oscar. Him and I opened Java Love in 1994, which became Baja Bistro, which is in Beacon Hill as well. So I've been an entrepreneur since the age of 17. I was in high school. That's where we met. And so I've been an entrepreneur, not by choice, but that's what my brother, made me do. And I mean, imagine 17 years old getting up on Saturdays and Sundays at 7 in the morning instead of sleeping in till 10, 11, 12. So I hated it. But it made me who I am now. I can go a night before, no joke. I can go a night before and have some drinks with my friends and still wake up at 5 in the morning next day and be like, okay, well, that was crazy. I shouldn't have done that. But I'm still responsible, but that, the mentorship of him, yo, this is what you have to do. My father was also he used to he was a grinder, he grind a lot. So I learned that from two men in my house. My mother being being at home, taking care of all the kids. I'm Mexican and Catholic, so it's 9 of us. It was 9 of us, so she took care of all of us. So it was insane. Yeah. So that I learned all of that, from these mentors, and they were not business, let's say, mentors, but they were mentally mentors to take care of me, to be okay, this is the steps that you got to do.
Absolutely.
So I was now I'm doing that to my employees, to my kids, to people that I can talk to.
Yeah, absolutely, and not just being the mentee, but also being the mentor and passing the game. That's it.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I mean, listening to you speak about family, I mean, the one thing that I can think of was a huge, you could say mentor-ish or something, but just helped guide me into who I am and shaped me who I am is culture. a lot of the things that I've learned in my household and a lot of things that community members, whether it be via church or anything, it's the level of respect that I've learned to respect others and how to treat young and old, just being a good person. And I think that I encourage everybody else that works with us to bring that out at work. Your hospitality, that's one thing that I've always shown at work to those that are. I call it work. I don't call it. This is a job for me. That's huge for me.
So, I think I just want to stress the importance of having people who look like us do things and be open to mentor others. Where I come from, I didn't really have much models of women. We were not encouraged to take risks or take responsibility. Like, one of the reasons I ended up studying psychology was because of this whole narrative of the caregiver, and I ended up in a career that I don't necessarily appreciate. I mean, for myself, I appreciate the work of psychologists, but I don't like it. So I love entrepreneurship, and it has been in Seattle that I've seen women engage in taking risks and invite me to take risks. So Susan Hall, who was my clinical supervisor, but she was a better business woman than a therapist. She started this Seattle Therapy Alliance thing and took tremendous risks with real estate and so I got excited about that and rented my first office for my private practice and wrote a huge check, super scared. But she continued encouraging me, and I started being comfortable with risks and kind of learning it's a muscle. And when you take risks, you find that people come alongside you and encourage you in the way. So for myself, I get super excited when anyone comes like, hey, I have an idea, I want to start something. We had these kids coming to a coffee shop one day, and I was at a meeting with a housing organizing actually, and I hear these kids from Rainier Valley, these teenagers. They introduced themselves as entrepreneurs. I'm like, say what now? So I just dropped the meeting, walked out. It was super creepy and scary, but I said hey guys, what are you doing? They're doing a farm stand. So I said, offer anything we can do for you guys, just let us know. So now we're hosting one location for the farm stand on Tuesdays and Saturdays.
Say more. What's the farm stand called?
What is it called? No, I don't remember. But we actually have a problem in South Park with accessing produce and food. We're considered a food desert. So they're selling their produce that they started last Tuesday. They're going next Saturday.
Well, we will find out the name,
Yes.
and we'll make sure we link everybody to the farm stand.
Yes.
That's amazing. Absolutely. Leona.
I forgot what the question was.
Mentorship.
Gosh. I honestly have to say it's this man sitting next to me, because when we opened the station, I wasn't there to work. I actually worked in a law firm. I was a secretary in a law firm for a total of 8 years, but I had stayed there for the first 3 years that the station was open, and I would just help out on the weekends and stuff. And I mean, I supported Luis in him opening up the station by himself and getting everything built up and everything. And I basically, followed him 3 years later, after, So I have to say it's my husband. I have to, but yeah.
Okay. Shout out to Luis. And so before we open it up for Q&A, we'll only have time for 3 folks to do Q&A. So, think of whoever, if you have the best question, please raise your hand. But before no pressure. My last question for y'all on that same note, tell us the resources that are in the city, in the organizations that either you utilized yourself or encourage folks to utilize when it comes to starting a business in the city of Seattle specifically.
Ooh, can I answer
OED?
that real quick?
Yes. Go.
I'm sorry I want to answer that because when we opened the station, we didn't go to anybody for help. I mean, we got a loan from a family member, but we didn't go to any resources like through the city or anything. We just kind of like hustled. He had to hustle himself to get it open. We didn't even know. And I remember I told you before when you interviewed me that people who are willing to give and help out with small businesses maybe put it out there a little bit better because we had no idea. And so maybe it wouldn't have been as hard to get the station open if you would have known about the resources. So, yeah. Anyway.
I was going to say OED. I didn't really benefit too much in the beginning, in the earlier stages, but...
And OED stands for what?
Office of Economic and Development. Okay.
Sorry. There's just tons of information, tons of resources. And you definitely have people in there that are PLC, that are supportive, folks that, you wouldn't really know that are as supportive, but they're there. I in the beginning, didn't take a lot of advantage of it. I didn't know about it. But I feel like nowadays it's out there, folks are starting to kind of understand what resources are out there. And, that's for me, I tell a lot of folks, hey, just go there first because, they've got a pool of information and resources that I might not know of.
For me, the biggest one was Business Impact Northwest. So Adra Green, now Adra Waits, she just got married. She was my coach, and it was a free service, and we would just get together, and she would encourage me and let me talk for hours, and so they were pretty instrumental. And then they had this competition that gave us the first bundle of cash to buy a espresso machine. The Office of Economic Development too, and I was fortunate enough to be connected with the Impact Hub before, where I, just by virtue of being in the same place, that's one of my reasons that I'm a big believer in physical spaces. I knew about the Center for Inclusive Entrepreneurship and others. It didn't necessarily translate too much into access to capital though. That I feel that I had to hustle a little bit more on my own, but definitely super good resources as far as information goes.
Yeah, for funding, free stuff. Sometimes the OED will, hook you up with students that'll do things for you and help, whether it be research or, Yeah,
and I think the two more, I know that the University of Washington's School of Business MBA program, I just met some folks from them through Gabriella, who's in the audience, who runs an amazing business as well, and the Seattle Public Library. Jay Lehman, actually, tell him Dominique sent you. Jay Lehman is just a treasure trove of just knowledge, and it's all free, right? And he'll look up, how many folks are taking vacation to Chile a year in your neighborhood. It's kind of creepy, but it's just an example of all the information that he can find, but help you with a business plan and all of that. But cool. Do we have any audience questions? And feel free to come down, please. Because you got to talk into the microphone. This is all recorded, Gurmai.
Oh, okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. 10 years from now, 2028, if all your wildest dreams come true, can you tell us one thing about your life or your business that paint us a picture what it looks like 2028?
I said the best question. There it is. My man.
Well, jeez. with this president we have, right? Right?
If there's a 2020?
If there's a 2019. She's right. So for me, I'm 41 years old. I'll be 41 in September, so next month. I would love to be retired. I would love to be somewhere in Latin America. I don't think I want to be here, to be honest with you. I think that this country has brought me some amazing joy and amazing wealth or whatever, but also has broke my heart many times. So I don't think I want to be here. So in 2028, probably away from here. If it goes, especially if it keeps going the way it's going. And, huh?
Will the station be opened?
Maybe we can have our own, coffee shop somewhere else, I definitely will do my research of places that love my people, our people, and that's where I would like to invest my money, my time, my effort, my heart, my soul, my everything. So I don't know. I don't think that this country really loves us, completely. So, yeah.
I think 2028, 10 years, 28. By that time, I hope to continue on the journey of creating a sustainable market for Ethiopian coffee farmers and producers. That's always been one of my goals starting out. It's building a community here and a community in Ethiopia of farmers that will, in any way where we can impact both communities in many different ways, whether it be innovation, whether it be resources or anything. I could just picture myself in a small little farm in Ethiopia right now, working and engaging and just kind of like just being impactful. And starting this coffee company and starting the coffee shop, that was always my goal, was to get to that point, and I've gotten closer and closer every year. And so, Cafe Avole was just the beginning, and I hope to continue to expand that.
My hope 10 years from now is that I had started several initiatives that have created opportunity for people, either in employment, career development, or housing. Hoping that people in South Park are able to, the same people who live there now are able to thrive in place in 2020. It's scary to think 10 years from now in Seattle, but yeah, I hope that I've started a few things in my life, and just would like to start several more that.
Okay. Yeah. All right, 2028.
Yep.
If all's good and it ends, I was
gonna say.
Have a conversation.
I was gonna say, if all was good, I'm gonna come retire with you too. So
right.
I'm with him on the journey of retirement. So yeah.
I'm saying.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to be retired tomorrow. I'm lazy.
She said 2028.
I'm ready to lay down right now. No, actually, I actually love being at the station. I love being there. But I wouldn't mind being retired, and as long as I'm kept, buy me things and take care of me, go wherever he wants to go. No.
I'll climb in a pine coconut and be like, this is what I buy you.
Hey, I'll take it. No, I wouldn't mind being retired. I just want the communities our community to stay, mixed with POC and LGBTQ and everybody, and not push everybody out who can't afford to live there. I just want it to be, I'm hoping for my sons, who will be 25 and 21 in 10 years. Oh, sweet Jesus. That's a crazy thought. I would love for them to still be on Beacon Hill, living there, and, hopefully raising their family, or maybe run the shop. Hopefully that's in the shop still thriving, and maybe they can run it and, We can.
You'll be out here?
And we'll be out
You'll be-
here.
They'll send us money.
You'll send us money. We'll come visit.
I'm coming with y'all.
Yeah, please. Everybody's welcome. Yeah.
So I want to give space for someone who identifies as a woman to ask a question. So if there's anybody who, one more question that we have, I do want to make sure that we give space for someone who identifies as a woman to ask a question. And I want to be intentional about that. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for making that space specifically. And then also I just want to fill in a blank. It's the Seattle Parks and Recreation Farm Squad. That is, coming into Resistencia. And also a vision that I have as a part of Resistencia is that in 10 years, I would love to have a space where people with developmental disabilities in particular are hired and that space is created for them, because I feel like cafes are actually a really good opportunity for those individuals. And that said, having the kind of spaces that you have, the kind of cafes that you have that are here to create space other than gentrification, do you see that do you ever have moments where you feel that you're being gentrified? Do you ever have moments where you look around and you're like, oh, there's a lot of white people, there's a lot of that new environment, and how do you respond to that? And do you feel that at all, or does it just feel like we're all welcome here and it's not an issue? Just what is your view on that? Do you ever feel gentrified, and how do you handle that?
Yes.
So the station, the way the station is a community coffee shop, and the way I broke it down, community, was 3 words: responsibility, accountability, and unity. So my job as a member of my community is to hold my community responsible. So we responsible about if there are new gentrifiers who are coming into my neighborhood, I will have that conversation to be like, welcome to my neighborhood. Be responsible to put your money in our businesses around here. If you're gonna come and live and basically move a family from this neighborhood, be responsible to spend your money in this neighborhood. Don't come here, displace a family, and then spend 90% of your time and money and everything else in another neighborhood. They don't need your money. This neighborhood needs your money. So that's responsibility. Accountability is hold them accountable to do that. So, and unity is there's nothing we can, if Brooklyn couldn't do it, if Oakland couldn't do it, if East LA couldn't do it, meaning stopping gentrification, Beacon Hill is definitely not going to do it. Mm-hmm. So there's nothing we can do about stopping gentrification, but we can hold them accountable, we can hold them responsible, and we can unite and be like, okay, now how can we make our neighborhood still a neighborhood, you know? And my responsibility is hire POC. My accountability is people holding me accountable to be like, hey, you said that you were going to hire LGBTQI members, and you haven't. And once I do those 2 things, we can unite as one community by having those things. So, yeah, that's my take.
Oh, mine, I have something. Mine was, you're talking about gentrification and how we sometimes feel like it's super gentrified. It does feel that way in the station sometimes. Sometimes there'll be nothing but people of color. And then sometimes there'll be nothing but white people. But the only thing that bothers me is when someone new comes to the neighborhood and says, welcome to the neighborhood. This is a nice new shop. And I'm like, we've been here since 2010. We just moved. We're not new, you're new. So I don't say that, but thinking it. But I do make it clear. I'm like, no, we've been here for a while and we're just in a new location. And it's pretty and it's shiny, but we're still the same people. The vibe is just bigger, and that's, nothing has changed except the location.
I love when they think that the owner is a white person.
People are shocked when they find out that we're owners. They're shocked when they find out that we're married.
Yeah.
It's funny. Yeah. It's great.
Yeah.
It's pretty great, actually. It's nice.
Yeah. So I'm like, yes. We own it.
Yeah.
Gentrification.
I mean, I take gentrification and I take the root of the definition, and I don't. It's hard for me because displacement is the biggest issue. Anybody with money, doesn't matter race, color, religion, can come in and gentrify a neighborhood. I gentrified my neighborhood just because I poured a little bit of money into this coffee shop, and now the place looks lively enough for any, rich person to come into the community and spend some money. But as far as displacement, I think that's the challenge is, educating folks on how to create wealth and how to, be a part of change, which is something that we lack. And, sharing information and resources is important. And I think, I definitely see a lot of new faces in my neighborhood, but it doesn't stop me from continuing my journey. And so I just continue to just do me, unfortunately.
So Luis really messed me up with that comment on Brooklyn couldn't do it, Oakland couldn't do it, right? In a way, the name of the shop, Resistencia, was a little bit of being aware that it's almost a lost battle from the get-go. But one thing that I have, one gift of our tradition, of our Latino tradition that I've received, is the notion of si se puede, which is no matter how bad the odds, we're still gonna give it a shot. Because maybe we can do it. And yeah, I mean, one of my biggest fears is what's gonna happen with Seattle in 10 years. Are we gonna be a wealthy ghetto? Are buildings going to be empty? There are places in London, for example, that it's luxury condos and they're all empty, or storefronts that are empty because they're crazy and unaffordable. So that's a big fear of mine, and sometimes that the seats or the route to that expresses itself in most new neighbors happen to be white, right? And they come and they love it, so I like what you said about responsibility and accountability. I mean, I am new to South Park. I'm there like 4 years, and that's not a long time. But I'm also aware that I owe the fact that I was able to move and live in South Park and start a coffee shop to the work of first generation immigrants, moms who fought for that community 20 years ago. So how do we work to preserve those neighbors in place? It's a big question for me, and yeah, I mean, we can burn ourselves out trying to do it all, but just I guess like planting seeds of community and planting seeds of finding, like striking a collaborative chord with the work we do every day, and that's why I don't think there's nothing irrelevant about a cup of coffee these days.
For sure. Well, thank you all for sitting on this panel. Thank you for your wonderful questions. And thank you all for sitting and listening to us do our first live podcast. I really appreciate it. Please give our panelists a round of applause. Yes. Yes. And so before we go and we'll all exit out pretty quickly because I think they have something else starting in like 10 minutes. I wanted to make sure that first of all, I gave a big thank you and shout out to my wonderful, amazing fiance Diana Trin for always being there. She graduates in 2 weeks from the PA program. You rock. I also wanted to give a huge shout out to my sidekick, Yoshiko Ueda, who's right here and holds us down every week on the podcast. Also, Tay Thatch, who came in this season to run behind the scenes camera, and the reason why the camera looks 30 times better than it did the first 2 episodes when I did it myself. My sister-in-laws, Emily, Jessica, Lydia, who also fill in for the camera work as well, and all of y'all for listening and tuning in to us every week. We really appreciate it. And so thank you all. Please take some cheesecake because I don't want to take any cheesecake home. Please get some more coffee. And yes, thank you all and stay tuned. Peace and love.
If you liked what you heard, be sure to donate so we can keep going. We are on SoundCloud, iTunes, and YouTube, so be sure to subscribe, rate, and comment. You have no idea how much it helps. We also want to know what you think. You can hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and you can even use the hashtag #NoBlueprint. And if you're really down with the movement, you can join our Patreon account and become a patron, where you'll get exclusive content and limited edition merchandise. No Blueprint is powered by Ambassador Stories. We share stories of the people, places, and spaces that bring soul to our communities. No Blueprint is recorded at Ambassador Stories Studios and co-produced with me, Maya Aina. Hear more episodes of No Blueprint and get official No Blueprint merchandise at noblueprintpodcast.com.